Well, Julia, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here, and I apologize for not being able to sit in the same room, but, we're social distance compliant. Would you agree?
I feel like I'm the most compliant that I've been for anything in my entire life.
Well, good. See, we want to make sure people understand we are in the same building. We're in different suites. Although it was very cool of you. She came into the Boogie Street Studio while I was in another part of the building and did a live. What did you do there?
I did not do live, because I wanted to make sure that it was okay for me to share it before
Sharing
you did.
You want. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we're in the future discussing this, in the past, I'll have already shared the video that I recorded in the past, but I just put it on my phone. I didn't go live at all.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, when you see it later, friends.
Well, they'll have already seen it by now.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because I'm not going to, see, the whole time space continuum thing is a little lost, because we are in the age of the coronavirus.
Well,
right?
And we're in an alternate dimension of reality right now.
What day
anyway.
of the week is this?
I only know it's Monday because I'm still working.
That's right. You're still working.
Yeah.
I would love to be working. I guess people say this is a job. This is not a job. This is fun to me.
Well, that's good.
So how is life under quarantine?
Oh, gosh. Well, so I work in healthcare, so I am not technically under quarantine. My day job or day-to-day 9 to 5, whatever you want to call it. I'm a dietetic technician, so I work at a hospital. So I have not been really quarantined to the degree that everybody else is. However, when I'm not at work, I am self-quarantining for the most part because I feel like I'm a high-risk person. So I'm trying to kind of, respectfully stay as far away from all the people I love and care about to protect them from this current situation that we're in. So that part has been hard. I'm a very social person, so it's hard not being around my friends and family. So yeah, it's definitely, I'm feeling it for sure.
How's your husband handling it?
I mean, he's also still working. We're both...
you guys are in good shape then.
Yeah, we're both very essential, apparently. So, but he's doing a lot of his work from home. He still goes in the office a little bit.
Okay.
But so, I mean, he's doing well with it, too. He was actually out of town for the first half of all this. So, right when he left, he had to do a job in Arkansas. And there was, one of the last places to get hit. So... Yeah. Where he was working, he was actually watching all this stuff kind of slowly shut down while he was states and states away. And he said it felt really surreal because they didn't really close anything. I don't even know if they ever officially shut that state down for sure. Cause I know some of the states around that area didn't really have to, cause they didn't really get any kind of wave there or anything. So he's been back for a couple of weeks and he seems to be doing fine.
Yeah, I think the Midwest was spared. It's probably population related, right? Would you guess?
Well, and where all the flights came in at, you know what I mean? If you think about where it originated, if it originated in Wuhan, where are all the flights that are coming through, and then Italy. Obviously, the, airport, JFK coming out of New York has tons of international flights. So it's not surprising that they got the first wave. And then also, where was it? Isn't there somewhere, was it in Washington?
I think so.
The state of Washington.
State of Washington.
I'm sure, and so that's the West Coast. So I mean, they probably have a good deal of flights coming out of there too. So
their personal care homes were hit first and hard up there. I think
that's so hard. I mean, that's honestly one of my friends that's a nurse posted something about how nursing homes are always, such hotbeds for any kind of outbreak, and it's true. I mean, they're living in close quarters. A lot of times they're understaffed. It's sad. They had an outbreak at one of the nursing homes that I actually used to visit when I was in community care. And I've had been in and out of that building a bunch of times. I'm not going to say which one, but it was sad because I remember, I don't know anybody there super well, but it's still you have that personal connection and it makes you, feel it's kind of that much more real.
There's my father is in a care home here in Pittsburgh for dementia. It's been 5 years now, and we can't see him obviously because we can't access the building. So that's tough on the families. But there was a care home that was very close to where we were located here in Coriopolis that had, I think, 1 or 2 deaths because of the disease. So it'll hit home. I think everybody's going to be touched to a degree. I think the whole world, or at least the whole country, is going stir crazy, though. You know?
Oh, yeah. Well, especially this is the time whenever most people are used to kind of, like, they're already stir crazy anyway. They've already been, inside because of the weather. If you're in a part of the country that's like ours, it's cold until May.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
Today's a nice day, but I mean, it's been up and down, for the past couple of weeks where we get like a couple nice days and then it rains.
Right.
So it's not like you're getting a lot of time outside. So you're kind of, just looking at the summer and the spring is like this time where you're getting ready to start going out and doing the things you love. And now we're all thinking about, what's going to be available? Like, what are we going to be able to do?
So let's talk about that a little bit. Twist of Fate Productions, your production company here. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the company and how it started in the history, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure.
But right now, talk a little bit about what your views are on when are we going to come back and be able to see shows? When is it going to be permissible to congregate in a theater, a bar, a venue of any kind? Do you have a guess?
Okay, so depending on the scale, the size and the scale of the event, I think is really going to determine like what we're allowed to do and what we're able to do. Mm-hmm. Since Twist of Fate has been mainly working out of clubs, our typical show is like 50 to 200 people. And so we're hoping everything that we have rescheduled now, we didn't reschedule anything before mid-June.
Okay.
And from what I remember whenever all this first started happening, I feel like the first number I heard was 200. So it was like, you can't have anything over 200 people. And then it was down to 50, and then it was 10. And then it was not at all.
That's a small show.
Yeah, right. And it's not like, hey, if you're really a diehard music fan, you've been to the
Oh, yeah,
so,
no doubt.
But yeah, it's my hope is that by midsummer or, by mid-June going into summer, that we are able to at least have like 50 to 200 cap rooms open.
Great.
That's my hope. And currently that's what I'm operating on. As far as large scale shows, thousands of people, sporting events. I actually read an article right before I left the house today that said, I think this one was Metal Injection. They said that don't expect the concert and touring season to be back into full swing until now. They're saying maybe fall of 2021.
Wow. So we're going to lose not just the whole season here. We're going to use the whole year.
I don't see. Here's the thing is I think some things may still happen depending on where they're supposed to happen. Because like if you look at like a lot of like the hard rock and metal tours they're cross country, international, whatever. I know a lot of bands just canceled their international tours because, international travel was really limited for, how long has it been now? But then, there's a lot of tours that come up that are just like a destination. You know what I mean? So like something like, like a lot like like Rock on the Range that usually happens in Ohio it's not Rock on the Range anymore. It's it's Temple Fest or something like that.
Temple Fest.
I'm totally screwing this up. I don't remember what it is, but they just changed the name. I went to Rock on the Range like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's supposed to happen in Ohio. Now, like Ohio, I think is opening up their state a little sooner. From what I remember, I think they pushed back the tour at least until like the fall, but that's like a one-time thing. Like that concert only happens one time.
Right.
So maybe it'll happen this fall or late summer. Maybe if things don't, everyone's concerned about this whole second wave thing. Some people may or may not be willing to risk it. I know there's ones that happen, like there's the Carolina Rebellion happens in the Carolinas. I don't recall hearing like a huge outbreak there. Maybe they'll still have that one. Maybe they won't. I think it'll just really be on a case-by-case basis and a state-by-state basis when it gets down to like this year. You know what I mean? Like what's going to happen this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if like sporting events, they went ahead and started them without crowds. Yeah. Played the games without anybody in the stands.
I hope they do that with baseball, selfishly for me. I'm okay with that.
People are home. They want to watch it anyway. So,
Right.
Isn't there like an MMA fight happening on an island somewhere?
I think that got canceled.
Did it really? Okay.
So much pressure was put on White. Dana White, I think, was the gentleman that owns MMA or whatever that is, that division. And I think he buckled to pressure.
Okay, yeah. Well, and that's,
But studio wrestling's still going on, which just boggles my mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what I mean. I think it's going to be like an industry by industry, case by case basis. Like I said, I'm really hopeful that like by this summer, at least we'll be able to do like 50 to 200 cap rooms. That's my hope.
Great.
And like I said, I might be overly optimistic. I hope that I'm not being overly optimistic, but there's a lot of, we have stuff that we want. We actually didn't reschedule. We didn't schedule anything new once all this started. Like we rescheduled everything that we had planned from March to April.
Okay.
And then everything else, everyone else that's emailed me, like I've actually had a lot of bands that are trying to travel in the summer and into the fall, and I've just kind of told all of them just hold tight for now until I get a sense of what the state's going to do and what's going to happen. So I haven't, everything that we have scheduled now was already stuff that was in the works, and I haven't done anything new yet because I do want to see what the feel is, what the vibe is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like what, how it's just how it looks. Because I don't know.
Do you have any fear, and I mean fear in regards to your industry, do you have any fear that the longer people are home and the more accustomed to a certain degree they get to getting their media delivered, in whether it's on their phones, their tablets, or their television, that coupled with maybe some lingering fear about congregating again, do you think there's going to be lasting impacts on live shows?
I mean, I think that, so this is interesting. My cousin's and he's an artist and he lives in Florida, and he was talking about like the bigger companies like, Disney and stuff. I mean, they have 5 and 10 year plans for like rides and stuff, and they're not even phased in some ways. So the things that they have planned for the next 5 to 10 years are still going to happen. They're still, in their minds, are still going to take place. And so I think like it depends on what your long term looks like. Are we talking long term, 1 to 3 years, 5 to 10 years? I think the next like year to 2 years is going to be weird. I don't think that people are going to rebound as quickly in certain areas, especially the areas that were more affected, especially because like New York is such a hub for the entertainment industry in some respects. I mean, they're not like the main hub in the way that they used to be, since they're saying, a lot of the industries moved to the West Coast. But I mean, from what I understand, in LA, they really shut everything down pretty quickly, and so they didn't get this big outbreak, which is pretty impressive considering how many people are there.
Right.
So, I don't know. I think psychologically everyone's going to look at it differently, but we're all different. Everyone that's from a different area looks at things differently anyway. So like my experience of the coronavirus and, the quarantine 2020 as someone who's born and raised in Pittsburgh, working in a hospital that fortunately has not seen, knock on wood, the big surge that we were preparing for.
Right.
I feel safe. I feel safe going to work. I feel safe, but I don't know. I think that's because I feel like I'm getting a lot of information in real time, from my work, from, the resources that we have there. So I'm looking at it in a practical way. And I feel like some people are just getting their information from the media, and then they're almost like allowing themselves to get worked up. I don't want to say it that way. I don't want to sound like I'm talking down towards anyone, but I think that some people are just more easily influenced.
I would agree.
And so then I think, some people are going to have lasting fears maybe, based on what they interpreted from what they watched on television or whatever. Or what they read on Facebook and some article that maybe didn't even have a reliable source, or you know what I mean? You don't know where people are getting their information.
Yeah, I think I think that is that culmination of like people watching the news on TV, then going to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. But please don't go to Twitter. But
I still don't have a Twitter. I don't
have them either. So that's the Wild West. That's like the what did one of my guests describe Twitter as not the Wild West of social media. That's probably too nice. The gutter of social media, I think they called it, or whatever. I don't know.
See, I always feel like I'm kind of like missing out in a way, because I Twitter's one of those ones that's been around for so long, and I feel like I didn't get in on it when it was, happening, and now I feel like I'm like
you're missing it.
I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything, but I kind of feel like I don't get the vibe or like the culture well enough that I feel like if I would I would be like lost at sea or something.
I know it's vicious.
I know, that's what I mean. And I'm like, maybe I don't know that I'm too nice, but I think that I don't really want to be confrontational online. That's like,
there's enough of that.
Yeah, that's like kind of the complete opposite of what I'm interested in. I'm confrontational enough in person that like I feel like online.
I know,
like
she's only been here about an hour pre-show, and I'm already beaten up.
No, I'm really working on that. Okay.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So you, I guess I don't know if I drove my point home. You don't think there's going to be a seismic shift in ingesting media and entertainment at home and then reacquainting the experience of going out, because your Twist of Fate Promotions is your stated mission is to not just be a great how do you say, not a promotion company.
We're helping to build a community where music matters.
So what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, and here's the thing is I think that if we want to talk about like a shift in the way people consume media, that's already happened. That happened before the coronavirus.
Okay.
The world shifted to digital media and digital mediums, a while ago. And so I think nothing will ever replace the live experience, but I do think communities can exist online. And I think that, we all sort of have to adapt to what is, I hate these like new normal terms, because I feel like, I like the fact that a lot of people are kind of pointing out, well, what was normal anyway before? Think about how many people were like surrounded by people in their own world on their phone anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a digital component to any community anyway.
Okay.
And it's not that I haven't embraced that, but I prefer, me personally, like I prefer the live experience. Like I prefer being in person with people. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people do. And I think that this has shown us in a lot of ways, like how social people really are, even though the people that are antisocial are like starting to feel the burden a little bit from just being on their own for this long of a time.
Right.
So I think that once the information's out there, once they get a grip on, treatments, vaccines, testing, all that stuff that, you hear talked about constantly, once that really kind of comes to fruition, I think we'll get a grip on it, just like everything else that we've dealt with as a society as far as disease is concerned.
Okay.
And I think that'll give people a sense of security and safety. And if anything, it'll teach us, the importance of hygiene, I guess. Like maybe it'll be like, hey, maybe there'll be more bathrooms at concerts. Wouldn't that be great? Or like,
that's a good point.
Maybe they'll have like, they'll be more conscious about keeping the hand sanitizers full at porta potties. I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
I don't know.
That'd be a nice
like,
byproduct of this.
Who knows? So I don't know. I mean, I think it'll bounce back, and I think that the desire is going to be there regardless. And I think if anything, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder. So who knows? Maybe 2020 will really be rough for the industry, and 2021 will be kind of a climbing year, and then maybe by 2022, 2023, we'll be in a situation where people are, live music industry is thriving. Who knows?
For me personally, I enjoy seeing these live from the living room or basement, whatever these artists are doing. And then believe me, it's not a knock, because they want to perform in front of people. They want to contribute. Some of them are for charity. I get all of that, and I admire them for it, locally here in Pittsburgh and also your national artists. Mm-hmm. There's no criticism coming from me, but what I will tell you personally, it's like it's just real unfulfilling, and it's almost like a tease, because the concert experience for me has always been an extremely exciting thing, even small venue stuff, because I think also as a musician though, I feed off the energy of the band in front of me as part of the experience.
For sure.
So that's not
it's not replaceable.
It's not replaceable. No. The in-person experience of a concert is just you can't compare that to watching a band perform live, even in 4K on a massive television with a great sound system.
No, I mean, even look at like just having a conversation. Like, look at how different it is to have a conversation, in two different rooms. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not the same thing. You can add all the technology in, and thank God we have the technology that we do, so people have been probably more connected than they would have been otherwise. And especially I always think for families and, people that have to travel regularly, like it's great that we have so many ways to, stay involved and stay connected. And I think it's important that artists have really tried to reach their fans on different levels right now, because there are people that are naturally more introverted and isolated regardless. And so you give, pile on all these other factors, and there are people that are feeling really alone and that don't really maybe have the initiative normally to reach out to people. And so, kind of meeting people where they are right now, I think is really important. But
I think so too.
I don't think that there will be like a full-on paradigm shift of like how people consume music in that way, and sports and every other aspect of entertainment, because I think you're right, the live experience is, it just, it is irreplaceable. Yeah,
and it can't be mirrored. And again, it's been cool to see some of these obscure artists that you don't see very often. One of my favorite guitar players is Al Di Meola, and I've only seen him a handful of times live in person, but I've watched like 7 performances already from his basement studio.
Right.
And that's kind of cool, because you don't see it too often, but there's just something lacking, and it's,
yeah, it's not the same.
It's an intangible. So where did the idea come from to get into the promotions part of not only just live venue music here in Pittsburgh, but to handle, correct me if I'm wrong, but you handle like the metal and the heavier music generally, right?
Yeah, that's sort of been
or your niche.
Yeah, I love that word. Yeah, good word. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Niche or niche, if you want to sound pretentious.
We're not that far advanced here.
I know, right? So Twist of Fate started. We always kind of like tell this like little story of like, back in December of 2016. My husband, Jerry's band, Winter's Descent, and a friend of ours, Jason Kazura, his band, Silence Follows, played a show together, and the 3 of us kind of spearheaded the organization. So that was the first show that like I ever really had help in promoting from start to finish. Now, my husband's been in a band for years. I helped sell merch. I helped sell tickets. You know what I mean? I did stuff like that before then. But for this show, we all kind of like worked on the promotion together. It turned out really well. It was 5 bands, which I've never done since. way too much.
Why?
Because it's so hard, not just to organize it, but it's hard for like everybody to really get, enough time to play, to like not exhaust the audience. You want to, keep it exciting for everybody.
Okay.
And, you don't want to like 5 bands, it's a lot to manage from just a logistic standpoint.
Okay.
But then on top of that, it's just, like I said, from the crowd's perspective, the show is really long, you know what I mean? It's like, you want to have time in between, but then at the same time, you want to keep things going. You want to give everyone enough time to play, but you don't want it to go on forever.
Right.
It's just a lot. So we did that one with 5 bands. It was the Funhouse at Mr. Small's in December of 2016. And that was a new venue at the time.
Right.
And so we were asked by Jason and our buddy Jesse down at Funhouse to kind of work together on doing a hard rock and metal night once a month.
Okay.
And so the 3 of us, Jerry, Jason, and I, started doing it every month. And I think Jason had done 1 or 2 before then on his own. And so the 3 of us kind of like, we did a sort of loose collective, and we were calling it the Homegrown Hard Rock Showcase for a while. And then we did that for probably about 1.5 years. And, Jerry and I kind of sat down at one point together, and we were like, you know what, like we've been putting a lot of our efforts into it. We've been putting a lot of our own, money into it, our own time. Like, this is never going to grow if we don't kind of, make it official, do the paperwork, do all the, the things you do to start an actual business. And we just decided, we're like, if we're going to do this, we should just do it. And so we created Twist of Fate Productions as its own entity.
Okay.
And then kind of like, not at the exact same time, but sort of in a similar time frame, took the showcase we were working on with Jason and rebranded it, the 3 of us, and called, and then now that exists as the Crucible Project. So that's still a monthly series that we collaborate on. And so then that enabled Twist of Fate Productions to go and book at other venues and also be an official business with a tax ID and all that fun stuff too.
Right. Okay.
So, you know, we, I think it was in March, we hit our full 2-year mark.
Okay.
So we've officially existed as a business for 2 full years. Or I think it's 2, maybe it's 3. I don't know. It's starting to all blend together. So what made me do it is because I'm crazy. And being a promoter is just, you have to like have at least a little bit of insanity to want to do that.
I heard that.
And so literally a lot of it came from, you know, like I said, Jerry being in a band for all these years and just being tired of the way that some of the promoters were treating local artists and wanting to do something that really made a difference for especially the hard rock and metal scene, but just for local artists in general, for them to feel like they were being listened to and being treated well.
Right.
We built like our whole business practice around the artist. And, you know, it's a labor of love for sure. And we really try to make even like I have seen promoters at different times like come into a club size venue, you know, collect all the money for the bands, pay the venue, pocket the rest of the money and just dip, and then not do, you know, a set or you know, a lineup for the bands, like not give them time slots, not do any organization, not deal with a sound guy, nothing. So when we're there,
so that's a booking agent, right? Just got them there and it didn't take care of them once they were there.
Well, I don't even know if it's a booking agent, because I think I've dealt with booking agents and I feel like they do more than that too. And you know, part of why we made it Twisted Fate Productions is we did want to have like the ability to kind of have a little bit of latitude, that if we ever wanted to, you know, dip our toes into being booking agents or to being, you know, artist developers or anything else that we might want to do, or anything we would want to do virtually online or whatever, sound and lighting, you know, who knows, like we just kind of wanted to give ourselves enough room to grow in whatever direction we wanted to. But we knew we wanted to be in the music industry and be people that were coming at it from the perspective of wanting to care for the artists and wanting to really help bring their vision forward. And like, so if I am promoting a show, like I talk to all the bands all throughout the process. They probably think I'm a pain because I will, like, you know, message them throughout the, you know, like, hey, you know, where are you guys at with, if I'm selling tickets, like, you know, where are you guys at with your ticket sales? Do you need more tickets? Are you sharing things? Like, I'm getting flyers printed. Can you meet me? And can you take 5 of them? And I'll take 5 of them and I'll put them up here if you can put them up there. You know, it's, I mean, at this level, it's not like we're, you know, we're not Live Nation. We're not, you know,
so it's real organic then.
Yeah, you know, and it's like it's not like we're making a ton off of any show. So I expect the bands to be a partner, because you know, we've always paid artists too. Unless the show was a free show or a benefit, and the artist knew going in that like, you know, we're doing a free show, or this is a door split, and you know, we've offered a, you know, whatever to a touring band or some whatever, or if it's a benefit and we're raising all the door, you know, for this cause. Any other time, we've always paid bands. And so if I'm, you know, going into like that agreement with a band, I expect them to be a partner in the promotion too. And I think that was another principle that we really sort of founded our company on. Did
you were inclined to do or concentrate on heavier music, right? I mean, why? So what, did you ever think about going outside of that niche?
The niche.
The niche.
You know what? We have done a little bit. So we've done, I think we did one acoustic show.
Okay.
We've done like, kind of like mixed genre shows. We've definitely focused a lot on hard rock and metal, just basically probably out of personal preference.
Sure.
I mean, that's what I listen to.
Right.
I feel like I have
nothing wrong with that.
You know, I have the most knowledge base on it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to come into some, you know, a genre that I'm not very fluent in and say, you know, this is how it should be promoted. Although, you know, I'm trying to kind of like expand my own, like, what I listen to, and just try and, you know, I know what my tastes are though. It's kind of, I think what it comes down to is I like heavier music, and that's what I kind of came up on. That's what I feel comfortable in, and that's what I'd like to see grow as far as what we're doing with our company. But at the same time, I mean, when we did an acoustic show for who was it? We had Same Moon and Aubrey. what is her? She was on American Idol. I can't remember her last name now. It's going to kill me. Whatever. But anyway, she was she was a contestant on American Idol. She's fantastic. She's beautiful, young, like great singer,
Right.
and the show was so much fun. We had it at Black Forge. It's not so far outside of what I listen to pop music a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not so far outside of what I like that I can enjoy anything. You know what I mean? Like as far as music goes, I definitely have things that I like more.
Right.
But if I go to like more of an indie rock show, I'm gonna have fun. You know what I mean? If I'm at a hip hop show, I'm gonna have fun. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to broaden your horizons, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely been our focus, just because that's
Aubrey, red hair,
yes,
young,
yes,
does some country stuff as well too.
Yes.
I think she's done some gigs with my good friend Abby Abendanza from the Hillbilly Way, which was the probably in Hillbillies years and years ago.
Okay.
That's how I think I know her.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I mean, that show was a ton of fun, and like we had we did Sykes and the New Violence over at where was that? That one was at the Spirit Lodge, and we had Dive and the Fading Light, and which are both more like indie rock bands. I mean, I had a great time with that show too. It was I enjoy a lot of different types of music. So I mean, for me, it's always fun when I get to promote something that's like outside of that realm, but I always feel right at home promoting hard rock and metal. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, that's kind of been my focus, but probably just because it's where my tastes lie.
We spoke a little bit off camera about heavy metal and the genre of heavy metal in the year 2020. And of course, let's dive a little bit into that in terms of Pittsburgh audiences.
Okay.
Because depending on who you speak with, metal's dead, metal's not dead. There's metal audiences in Pittsburgh. There's no metal audiences in Pittsburgh. There's metal audiences in Pittsburgh, but they won't pay the $5 or $10 cover charge to go see live music. What's your experience been in regards to metal and heavier music live promotion in Pittsburgh?
Okay, so maybe I'm an optimist generally.
You're definitely an optimist.
But I think, honestly, I mean, I see a lot of support in the metal community. I think where people, you'll hear things like the Pittsburgh music scene is cliquey or whatever. And here's the thing, and this is my perception of it, is that in general, there's a lot of subgenres in metal right now, and there have been for some time.
Like, what do you mean?
So like, there's just all different types of metal. There's metalcore, there's doom metal, there's I don't know, like, what is it? Classic metal. There's hair metal, which I guess is not a thing anymore, but kind of making a comeback. And then there's
what is that, 80s metal?
Yeah, like, I guess. And then there's like power metal, and then there's video game metal and
black metal.
Yeah, black metal, death metal, like all that kind of stuff. And I mean, and
Cookie Monster singing.
Sure. And I guess I'll be the first to admit that, like, I definitely came up more in, like, I was probably more into like alternative metal and industrial in like the 90s and early 2000s, and maybe what other people would consider like more hard rock, and what other people who don't listen to anything heavy would consider metal, and that's where I feel like it really depends on who you ask, like what the perception of metal is. So all that to say, I do think there are like subcultures of metal, and I think that there are a lot of subcategories of metal, and I think that's because we live in a time where everything's accessible. And so if you really like kind of gravitate towards a certain sound, progressive metal, if there is a type of sound, and I'm not a musician, so I'm not even going to attempt to like try and throw out musical terms. But if there's just something that really appeals to you, there's a certain vibe that really appeals to you, if there's a certain type of progression of chords and, melodies that really appeal to you, if there's certain types of breakdowns and vocal stylings that appeal to you, you can find it, and you can probably find at least 10 people that also like it. So, I don't think it's unusual for people that find that they have something in common to gravitate towards each other. I don't think it's unusual, or I don't think there's anything wrong with it either. And to me, that's not cliquey. That's just people that have found a kinship kind of coming together and really like almost like nerd, like when people say like, I totally nerded out on this thing. Like I got like really, I went down a rabbit hole. I got really into it. It's like, if you find someone else that like really shares in your specific passion of a very specific style of music, I don't think that's fine. And I've never felt out of place at any style of metal show that I've gone to. Yeah, I never feel unwelcome. I don't ever feel like...
It's a big tent.
What?
It's a big tent.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there are some people that are very like, I think people kind of get pigeonholed perception wise, especially because like, we all know each other online now. And so if you are someone that posts X, Y, and Z, then you're, and the same thing happens like in politics where it's like, if you fall under this umbrella, you have to be, you have to fit all these different categories. And I don't think it's like that for anybody. I think a lot of us really find ourselves in this kind of gray area of like, I like all these different types of bands and, some of them have overlap and some of them are so far in two different directions that like no one would associate them, but I really like them both. And so when it comes to metal, I mean, in Pittsburgh, I think there's a lot of people that support metal. I think a lot of people just do it in a different way. I know some people that will literally buy a t-shirt from any band that they love. You know what I mean? Like, but they might only go to, a handful of shows a year.
Right.
But the fact is there's so many bands and so many venues, in my opinion, that you could be at a show every weekend before all this.
It'll return.
Exactly. And so it's like, you might say, well, I don't see so-and-so out, but maybe they just don't go to that venue very often. Maybe it's across the river for them and they don't I'm guilty of the same thing. Like
It's a Pittsburgh phenomenon. They don't want to cross the bridge.
It's funny because it's true. Like
it's true.
I'm way more comfortable. And I mean, obviously I came up, promoting shows at the Funhouse right when they opened. So I'm super comfortable there. I know the staff. It's like literally like 10 minutes from my house. I don't have to cross a bridge to get there. It's great. But I mean, I'll go to Kativo or I'll go to, Spirit if there's something happening there, or I'll go, when, Howlers was there, or I'll go to wherever, or I'll go to like AE, or I'll go to, a bigger venue. And like I said, I don't feel unwelcome. It's not the same as going to like my home venue.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, it's not bad. It's just different, and I think that a lot of people have the perception that they maybe see certain crowds at certain venues more frequently than others, and that it's like those people only support that thing. But it's I don't see it that way. I mean, I see a lot of people going to a lot of different venues. There are some people that I'll see like on any side of the bridge on any given day.
Any side of the bridge.
And so it's like, and I think that comes down to people. Some people are just more adventurous. Like some people will always sit on the same seat on the bus. Some people will always sit, you know what I mean? And that's just where they're comfortable. And so it's like, I don't fault someone for that. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine. And if that's the place that they feel the most comfortable, if that's the venue they like the best, if those are their friends and that's where they like feel at home.
Sure.
To me, like, that's because I see the same people liking and commenting on other people's posts or sharing other people's work or whatever. And so like, I think we have a very inclusive and very supportive community in the hard rock and metal. It's my long-winded answer.
No, I get it. There's probably 20 years difference in our age, but when I was a child in the 70s, oh God, when I was a child in the 70s and the 80s and going into the 90s, genres were very specific. You would go into a record store, believe it or not, it was a record store, National Record Mart, Oasis, whatever it was, and you would go to sections. And though, so a new artist comes out and it had to be classified. Rock, heavy metal, R&B, pop.
Yep.
That's what it was. So something happened in the 90s where you had a lot of blending, and that blending has continued. And most people that I speak with, Julia, tell me that that's a very positive thing. There's nothing negative with these different artists getting together and blending these genres of music to the point now where they're really outside of country music. You really can't pigeonhole bands in a certain style of music. Would you agree?
Well, and I think even in country, I mean, like, think about like Southern rock had a resurgence, and I mean, there's like, and I don't really listen to a lot of new country. Like, I remember my mom dated a guy that loved country when I was like, I don't know, maybe like 8.
Oh boy.
And so like I listened to like a lot of Garth Brooks and Bonnie Raitt, and I mean, those are artists
Right.
I think are still very, valuable as far as our collective culture is concerned. But from what I understand, like new country, like a lot of it is pretty easily mistaken for pop.
It is. Well, I think
Right?
that a line's being blurred there for sure.
Well,
Your
and that's-
Taylor Swifts, and I mean,
So that's what I mean. Like it's happening across the board. And I think a lot of it is due to or thanks to the internet, because everyone, even if you grow up in a small town,
right.
you can have access to anything.
Experience
and so,
anything.
yeah. And so like whereas like, at one point people were very influenced by, their scene in their area
Right.
and what was popular there. I just don't think that's as important anymore. I think, people are just getting to experience music any way they like it.
Well, the downside of that, I think, for someone my age, is I've watched the decades of really good revenue for bands, and then the internet age came in the late 90s and the file sharing and all that. But what's funny is it's not such a detriment to younger artists because they never grew up in the area where there was real money to be made, where there was contracts and record companies throwing big chunks of money at younger acts and paying for their tours and their hotels and their record production and all that stuff. So for us older people, we've seen the whole thing now. And I guess my question is, any artist that comes in here, and I consider you obviously in that field, you got to really have a love to really create that music today, because odds are likely you're probably not going to get big revenues from the actual content.
Right.
Is that right? Is that how you see it?
I mean, I think that the economic landscape for the music industry really changed. And I've spent a lot of time trying to wrap my head around it because obviously it's relevant to what I'm doing.
Sure.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I don't have a formal education in it, but I mean, I've definitely taken some courses online just to kind of try to understand the layout of the industry a little bit better from an economic standpoint.
Okay.
And the way I see it is that it's almost like the music industry really got its ass kicked with the internet initially because of, things like LimeWire and all that, Napster. Yeah. So, and it's funny because I feel like I was just not paying. I mean, that was like when that was really happening.
It's 20 years ago.
I just wasn't paying that close attention at that time. I don't think I wasn't that like aware of it, and it wasn't a main focal point for me. And I'm not an artist, so I wasn't making music. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity now that there is like new revenue streams for artists for the industry to kind of bounce back and for the artists to hopefully start seeing more of that revenue.
Okay. Give me an example. Like when you say revenue streams, what do you mean? I'm
thinking like, obviously with streaming, so Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Music or whatever it is. And then obviously like YouTube, Amazon Music, and then all of the different streaming platforms that are like worldwide. Like I know there's a bunch that are popular in Europe that we don't even use here that much.
Like Tidal.
Yeah. Tidal. So, once a band like really kind of starts to hit and starts to have, big numbers on streaming, then there's money to be made.
Is there?
I mean, there is. I think, that I was like on my way over here, and this is maybe a poor example for an independent artist, but a band like Shinedown, who I'm not even like a huge fan of, but they are, they're a huge band. They did that one song.
They've been a huge band for a long time.
Exactly. And so they released a song called Atlas Falls or something about Atlas Falls, or I don't know, whatever. It's not important. Anyway, they're donating all the revenue from that song streaming to relief for first responders, getting them their whatever.
Right.
And I think it was like over $20,000, and the song's only been out a couple weeks. And so that's not huge money, but if you think about it, that's one song for that band, and that's only a couple weeks worth of streaming. And now granted, that band has a huge audience with, like a bunch of push behind them from their label and, all their whole team or whatever. But I think that it shows possibility, and that's just one example. And then, you look at, I mean, I don't even know anything about SoundCloud, but you look at like the SoundCloud, rappers and all that kind of stuff, and like where, I don't know how they monetize all the different platforms, but I think that, I mean, a YouTuber, like the occupation of being someone that is a YouTube professional.
Right.
Didn't exist.
Influencer, right?
Whatever.
Artist.
Well, I guess like influencer, what isn't that Instagram or whatever? But so
maybe, I don't know.
Either way, but all these little like kind of things were only, they only really came up in the last, 10 to 20.
Yeah, technology moves fast.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like there's opportunity every time that there's, like a new platform that arises. A lot of it is just sort of, I think, taking the time to figure it out. And I do think that it still does come down to having great music.
Yeah, the quality of the music.
You know what I mean? And so then a lot of it's just learning how to navigate a new market and choosing the right people to work with. And then you look at like merchandising, the live business once it gets back to some, because that became a really important, revenue stream for artists.
Sure.
I mean, it always was, but then whenever record sales weren't as, important anymore, then you're looking at touring and, merchandise and all that kind of stuff. And that's where like, people look at the 360 deals now. I know they're highly criticized and it's, something a lot of people maybe do or don't understand, but the idea that basically your record label would have access to 360 degrees worth of your revenue, meaning your touring, your merchandise, whereas that they didn't used to have as much of a hand in that.
Right.
But depending on whether they've provided the artist with tour support or if they've put up an initial advance for them to order merchandise or whatever, that's a way for the record company to recoup costs, but also a way for the artist to make money as well if there's enough money in the pot. You know what I mean? And if they've negotiated a deal that makes enough sense. So I think that, as people are kind of realizing where their market or where their demographic is spending most of their money, like it's really been, time and time again kind of expressed through streaming numbers that pop and rap are killing rock and metal in the streaming world, like killing it. Because I think their demographic was just a lot quicker to shift to those platforms. Whereas rock and metal, people still have an interest in the physical copies of the CDs, records, cassette tapes made a comeback, all these like vintage things or whatever. I think that demographic is just more interested in that. Plus, I
have a theory.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a theory, not to interrupt you, but for my old brain, I might forget to bring it. It's an excellent point that you raised. There's something different about the metal community or the rock and roll community when it comes to the listening experience, I think, right, as opposed to R&B, not even R&B, but rap and pop music. I think the metal fan or the hard rock fan is more invested in the artist in its entirety in that experience, where they're going to read the liner notes. They're going to maybe seek out an actual album copy because they want to hold it physically tangible in their hands, as opposed to, I think, the buying singles or paying for singles in the pop or the rap era. It really isn't about the album experience. I think there's something different with I personally just feel that there's a different investment by the heavy metal or hard rock fan into the band.
Well, and if you look at newer artists, I mean, there's definitely a push for all genres to be doing mostly singles or EPs as opposed to albums, because
does that work in metal?
I think it does. I mean, I think it can. It depends on, you have to look at what works to make an album, because if a band doesn't have enough money to make an album, they're not making that good of an album anyway. And it's not. It might sound like a crappy. I don't know. Do you swear on your podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I feel like I've been trying to be a little bit careful.
You don't have to.
It might be like a shitty way to put it, but it's just like,
that's not swearing. Come on, give me something better than that.
Okay, I'll work up to it. Okay. But so like what I think though is that, not to say that it's all about money, but if you don't invest in the album, you know what I mean? If you haven't invested in decent artwork, or if you don't have someone in your band that's an artist, like a legit artist,
right?
If you don't, like, if you haven't put up the, production
quality of the audio, I mean,
I wasn't even getting there yet. I'm still on
is like, there's so much shitty sounding music out there.
Sure, exactly. And that's what I mean. So you've got like the audio, the production, whether the music was well written in the first place and then the band spent enough time writing the music. And then, what's the whole package look like? Like, does the branding make sense? Is it cohesive? Like, when I look at the album, does the logo look like it doesn't even belong on the album cover? You know what I mean? Like,
how come death metal bands have a bunch of, it looks like you threw a bunch of twigs in a bush and you have to like sit there for 5 minutes to see how it really spells out whatever it spells out. They all do the same thing.
I know. I don't know. That's not really like my world.
I know.
I've promoted a good deal of death metal, and I'll tell you the thing I like about death metal, and you're not going to catch me really like listening to it in the car necessarily.
Right.
But I love being at like a live metal show, like really heavy, because it's just like, I love the intensity. Like I'm not someone that likes to like be in the middle of a pit or anything, but I love like seeing like a pit break out and
really
such a good. It's like
it's
one of like the things that just like it's like that raw energy. You just like see it explode, and like it's coming from the artist and it's being like fed on by the the crowd, and it just like, and again that's like one of those live experiences that like you cannot replicate online. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I digress. So I do think that you have to, whether it's that you have a group of people that are naturally all talented in all the various aspects of what it takes to put a cohesive package in an album together, or you have to like invest a certain amount of money. And you're talking about like the production. How much does studio time cost? You know what I mean? Like
good studio time. And
I mean, I could tell you because I know a little bit about it, but I'm not going to. But if for a band to spend that kind of money, maybe they can, maybe they can't. So a band a lot of times is better off, doing 1 to 5 really good songs.
An EP.
Mm-hmm. Either a single or an EP.
Right.
What does it stand for? Because like an LP is like a long play.
Extended play.
I know you're right. That's right. Because an EP is an extended play, and an LP is a long play. I don't know. I probably sound like an idiot, but either way, it almost makes more sense, especially for up and coming bands that are doing things on a budget.
Right.
And then once they maybe get some traction and a listenership, and they can do, whether they do like online fundraising or whatever, then they can. Or just they have enough time to maybe do a tour whenever bands can tour again, or whatever, that they can make a little bit of money. So then the next album they put out is a full length. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To me, sometimes that's a better approach, because you're not blowing a ton of money right off the bat on, this long 11 song, masterpiece. And maybe you don't even have the audience to get it out to yet. Yeah. You know what I mean? You haven't built that yet. So I think, yes, my answer is I think it can work in the metal community. I think it is working for younger bands. And that's how I think a lot of, unsigned bands are actually getting to the forefront and doing things themselves. Because if they were focusing on trying to release a whole album, I don't think they'd be able to. You know what I mean? I don't think they'd be able to afford it. But then I think that once, you get to that point, people still want albums from the bands they love. You know what I mean? Like, I think
how they want it delivered, though. Are people still buying CDs? Are they buying vinyl? Because it's expensive for a band to fund their own vinyl pressing.
That's true. I think it depends on the fan, and it depends on the fan base.
I think the metal fans want that tangible thing, though. I think there's something about album covers and liner notes and sleeves. There's an investment into the band. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure fans of pop and R&B and rap feel the same. It's different, I think.
Right. And I think there is something about, like, I was working today, and I'm working from home this week, but I was looking over and I had like organized my CDs last year, and I just like, I can't tell you the last time. I might have listened to them 6 months ago, like when I had, back when I was allowed to have people over. But because I will take out my CDs and I do buy CDs from bands still. Like anymore, most of the time, if I buy a CD, I'm buying it from an unsigned artist, because I know that they spent the money to make them. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather buy one in that instance. Mm-hmm. And then I can stream, and I will say, like, occasionally, like, I definitely bought the new Tool album. I bought...
Don't tell anybody that.
I like it. I will stand up in front of anyone.
They're getting crucified. I don't understand why, but they're getting crucified in the media. I don't know why. I don't know.
I mean, I can go on that tangent if you want.
Sure. You can say anything you want. It's your show.
No, I mean, honestly, like, everyone's like, I think they got criticized a lot because of how long it took them to release it. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those albums.
Maynard, right?
Yeah. It's one of those albums that just grew on me more the more I listened to it. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't blow me away like some of their other albums did when I first listened to it. But then, I don't know. Like, I mean, there were songs that made an impact on me. And I think that it's very adult music. Like, I think that, like, it shows their progression.
Heaven forbid. Adult rock.
I mean, it's
adult metal.
Their music was thinky to begin with, so like, I think maybe adult's not like a good word because it has such a negative connotation. But I don't know. Like I think it's very advanced music. I guess maybe like it's the fact that they even bothered playing it on Octane, or I don't even know if they played it on any local stations, but it's not. It doesn't make sense to put it on that forum because it's like literally the shortest song is 10 minutes long. And if you're not a fan, you don't want a song on the radio for 10 minutes because you're going to turn the channel and you're going to come back and it's still going to be on like 10 minutes later. Uh-huh. And it's not radio friendly music, but it doesn't mean it's not good music. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, they're a band that I love. Like they're probably my favorite band.
And you're invested in them.
And I am.
And there's that loyalty, which is...
But it doesn't mean that if I love a band and they put an album out that I don't like, I won't criticize it. But I mean, like it didn't hit me the way that Enema or like Lateralis hit me when they released those. But I was in a whole different place in my life at those times. You know what I mean?
The beauty of music.
Exactly. Like I'm having a different experience with that album because of where I'm at in my life, and I think that they're producing different music because of where they're at in their lives. Anyway, so. When it comes to bands that I like, Breaking Benjamin, I bought their most recent album, and honestly, like, I didn't love their most recent album the way I've loved other albums they've put out. And then there were songs that like I really loved after I listened to it for a little while. So I will buy, I'll buy, and Stabbing Westward I think they're putting out a new album, and I'll buy that because they haven't put out music in forever because they were broken up for a while. So yeah, like if a band comes out with something new and I'm invested in them, I will buy it usually. But most of the time, I'm just streaming stuff. You know what I mean? I'm every band that I like every, band that I have an interest in that like puts out a new album. The way I support it most of the time is I just give it a full listen on Spotify, start to finish. You know what I mean? Like I try anyway. I don't do it every time.
Right.
But yeah, I think that hard rock and metal fans definitely like that tangible object. But what I was saying is like I looked and like saw all my CDs organized, and like I don't care that I haven't listened to them in a few months. Like I'm still satisfied that they're there. Like I'm glad that they're there. Like there is something about them physically being there that like, and maybe that is going to be a dated concept. People say that about books. Like why do people collect books? Like if you don't read, you don't care about books.
I love my books.
See, people that like aren't that, and I'm not saying that in a negative way either, because it doesn't mean that you're not smart if you're not into like reading. Some people like novels, some people read for information, some people read for pleasure.
They listen to podcasts, they listen to books on Audible.
Yeah, there's all different ways to like. My cousin always says consuming media. Like it sounds so like organic, I guess.
I say
like,
ingesting it. That's
what
worse.
I mean. Like it makes it sounds like weird and kind of like biological. But I like having. I mean, I have tons of physical books. I have tons of physical media. I get that it's impractical. I've heard that like who's that lady that does all that's on Netflix that like encourages everyone to get rid of stuff. Oh my god, Marie
the
something or whatever.
She read the book. It's all too much or something like that. I don't know.
I heard something about like you're only supposed to have 7 books. And I'm like, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, I think if you don't like the Kindle experience or if you don't like the digital reader experience, which I don't, then there's nothing wrong with keeping the book. I'd rather read the organic, turn the page. Yeah. I'd rather do that. I'm comfortable doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like, honestly, like I have tons of books I've never read. Like, I don't care. I'm glad I have them.
It's so funny you bring up the CD thing. I gave away my entire CD collection like 5 years ago.
Oh my God.
I ripped them all and then I uploaded them to Google Music, so I had them all available because I wasn't playing the CDs anymore.
So strange that you would do that.
I did. I gave away 700 something CDs.
Who did you give them to?
A friend of mine. I could probably get them back if I wanted.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just like, was it someone special?
No, I just had them in a box. I put them all in a box. I ripped everything that I wanted. And I high quality rips, and I put it on a hard drive, and then I uploaded them to Google Play so I could access them. And then it was funny because I kind of regret doing that because I remember going over the liner notes, and some of these CDs went back 30, 40, 30 years, 35 years. Like, wow, there were liner notes. I miss having the liner notes. I miss holding that tangible thing.
I get it. I would too.
Yeah, because some of the bands that I was really big on as a kid, like Rush and Kiss and things, there was shit in there. There was stuff in there.
Well, the artwork is as important.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
You're
totally
absolutely right. So don't give away your CD collection, no matter what. You never use it.
No matter what the trends are and how, who's telling you that you need to get rid of stuff. Don't do it.
Right. Yeah, don't give away. But it really comes down to that tangible thing. And I think people... Again, everybody ingests their music differently, but there's something about holding it in your hands. Like, it was amazing as a child to go to the National Record Mart, in sixth, seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade, and go there and wait for the new Rush record, wait for the new Lynyrd Skynyrd record, wait for the new Kiss album, whatever it was, and you get it, and you're like driving home, your parents are driving the car, and all that. I'm romanticizing it a little bit, but there was something to holding it there, and sometimes talking to your friends about the booklet inside, or and even knowing like who their producer was and who their, you would know these things because you'd want to ingest everything you could get about this particular artist beyond the music.
I think, honestly, I don't think that's lost. Like, that's one thing that's been really fun about watching Jerry go through this process with Winter's Descent this time around, because they did work with a producer, and they, are working with artists, and, and watching them kind of like in some steps of the process agonize over things for
sure.
But you realize like how much really goes into that, and that's why like when a band has fans that care that much, and that like they want all of that additional content, they want and like the word content is like really fashionable right now when it comes to music. However, I mean, like it makes sense, it's descriptive, and whether it's physical or online, I think that there's still a need for that, because that, like, what art really does, and I mean, whether it's visual art, audio, whatever, it, you reach someone in a place that maybe they feel totally alone. You know what I mean? Like, there might be someone might be going through something that like they think no one else has ever gone through. And then a song comes on and you're like, oh my God, like that's exactly what I've been experiencing. Or like,
beauty of music.
Yeah. Like I feel like, and like, that's when like, you really, all of a sudden you don't feel alone, and you don't feel like, you're like floundering through the darkness or whatever. And I think that when you have that experience as a listener, you want to know exactly how someone got there. You know what I mean? Like you want, like all of that, it's relevant and it makes sense. And it, like, you want to have that experience with them because you feel like they know a part of you that maybe no one else does. You know what I mean? And you've never even met them. And so like, it's like a way that you can kind of like know each other in this different way. And that, I've heard artists talk about their fans and the experiences that they've had, having fans approach them and just tell them how important it all is. And
absolutely,
and I think that that's valid, and I think it's cool. And I mean, like the fact that like, I think that in some ways people have gotten a little bit less inclined to express their enthusiasm, to me is just crazy. I'm like, no, like if I love something, like I want to tell everybody about
well, sure.
And I like that enthusiasm, and I think that people are starting to kind of get back to that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
There's I heard it described to me where like today with social media, which has been real prevalent in our lives, probably 2008ish. I mean, there was MySpace, but I mean, who the fuck paid attention to that stuff, right? So, but generally with Facebook and then obviously Twitter and Instagram and whatever the ones that have come and gone, what it has done is it's opened up a big window to our music heroes, the ones that want to participate. And then I'm reading these books I just completed Roger Daltrey's book of The Who, and and Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath, and Johnny Rotten. And you hear these guys from a different era, and I think you wanted to grasp as much information on them back then as you could, but it was still kind of a mystery. You didn't know what they ate for breakfast. You didn't know that their dog is named Fido, and it pooped in their backyard because you didn't see. You didn't know those inner little idiosyncrasies.
You didn't have that access.
No, and I'm not knocking that access. It's just different. It's just different in regards to having, and sometimes we demand instant access, instant information on artists that are not willing to give it. And so it's a different landscape today, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. And like I remember, like you're talking about like reading different like books about artists. Like I think I read Come As You Are because I was like the Kurt Cobain one. I read the one Manson wrote, and like I think what was the big magazine? Not just Rolling Stone, but there was another one.
Spin?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought of that in so long. But I mean, I would like go and buy them, and I would read them from cover to cover if it had an artist on the cover that I liked, and then I'd be like, all of a sudden they'd be like, oh, there's an article about this band, or Right.
We had Hit Parader and Spin generation, Hit Parader and Circus a generation before that.
Right. No, and I'm familiar, but yeah, Spin was a big one, and like. I agree. It's just like, it's one of those things where you really had to like dig for that information.
Search it out.
And it made you feel like you like found something out. And if you could tell your friend about it, you were like the first person that knew.
Right.
And now like everybody, it's like, it's fine. It's fine that people like, they, I don't know. Like I do follow a lot of artists on Instagram, especially because I feel like it's very visual. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I enjoy it. But I get I've read this article once a long time ago about Tool, which is interesting, but because they were so, they didn't like to have themselves in their videos or whatever, which anyone that's a fan would know, but they were like, they described them as like one of the like last true like mysteries and like
that's probably right,
like rock star mysteries or whatever, because even now, I mean, like if you follow any of them on it, you can see them, you can see
they're looking for that publicity.
Well,
they feel they need it. Not Tool, but I'm saying other bands, they've adapted it.
But I'm saying like even Tool now, like you can, I follow like most of their members, and you can see what they're having for breakfast some days.
Right.
But that's just the world we live in now. I agree. I think it's kind of almost like expected. And it's almost like if you're not participating, you're not part of the conversation, which is like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's good or bad or indifferent. I honestly don't know.
It's just different to me. And it took me a while to wrap my head around. The case in point for me, and I don't know if you'll be able to relate to this because, again, the age difference, but I was a Kiss fan growing up, and it all kind of worked out for me later in life, right? But in those areas of liking that band, then they took the makeup off in '83. It was hard to get information on them because they weren't real popular. And you had Hit Parader magazine, or once in a while, People magazine would have like a picture of like Gene Simmons with someone, or Paul Stanley with some starlet or whatever, and you would like wow, look at that, it was an amazing thing. But now Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley have been on social media for so long, it's just,
you're not even interested anymore.
I don't care. It's too much. It's just not. It isn't that I don't care. It's just there's nothing novel about it anymore. The joy that came with the experience of the album releases and putting that organic album on a turntable and reading the liner notes and talking to your friends and guessing things about them as people, right? Yeah. There was always a mystery there. It's not there anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's like what people are experiencing.
Prince. He was a recluse.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what I was going to say is I think people are like really experiencing that even like on just a social level with each other. You know what I mean? Like you used to really have to dig into a conversation with someone to find out what they thought about, social issues or, what their beliefs were, or just like what resonated with them.
Right.
Like you didn't have this kind of like digital persona that you just sort of got to like have kind of laid out in front of you. And it's hard because I don't think that everything everyone puts out is like the full picture. And I think there's
a very distorted picture with most.
And I think there's still a lot of value in getting to know people, and leading it back to the conversation about music, I think there's still value to like getting to know an artist outside of their like social media presence. And I think that's where the art, like the actual art, comes into play. You know what I mean? Like when you really just kind of like maybe ignore the conversation, ignore all the, hype that you read and like headlines and snippets. And because think about it, I mean, there was times, where, I mean, look at like Kurt Cobain with like all the, controversy surrounding him and everything. And then I think it overshadowed a lot of like his actual art. And for like the kind of an artist like that, all he probably really wanted was to express his art. And then all of a sudden it was like he had this whole story around his like, media persona. And I mean that, who knows, but that might have played a lot into, the
fame overtakes them.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to control it because they really kind of didn't want that to begin with. They probably wanted to be successful, but they didn't understand what was coming their way.
Right. And I think there time and time again, you see that expressed, especially I think it gets expressed in music a lot because it is there's such a component of like the entertainment industry where, it's very like visually centric, where you're kind of like, a lot of it's your brand and all these other things. Whereas like, maybe just a regular visual artist or a sculptor or whatever, they're not going to have that same level of like popularity expected to be successful.
Right.
I don't know, but I do think that, the true artists and musicians, like they do struggle with that. And I think now more than ever, because of the expectation of what you're supposed to do with social media and, how, oh gosh, you got to remember to post this many times, a week, and you have to post on this platform and you got to be consistent. And now you got to share stories and now you got to do this. And it's just like, it takes I think a lot of time away from just creating. That's what I see anyway.
Well, the top tier artists that have gotten paid, have advanced careers and are really, again, your top 10%, they can hire firms to do all that stuff.
Sure, exactly.
But yeah, I feel exactly what you're saying is in that. And so talk a little bit about when you're counseling a younger band, let's say they're on a bill that and you get to know them a little bit, and then they're open for recommendations, and you talk to them. How much do you have to? How important is it that they self-promote? Because I'm guessing self-promotion is the only promotion for most of these younger acts, right? Well,
and I mean it's hard because I'm looking at every experience that I'm having with a band right now, and the way that I'm working is I'm doing a show. You know what I mean? And so like I do want them promoting that show, and right. I do want them to be talking about it.
Now, how they do? Average? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it? Are you pulling teeth? Are you?
It depends. I mean, everyone's different. You know what I mean? I've worked with a lot of bands at this point. Some bands are great at it. Like some bands, they make it fun. Like, and I think that's really what it comes down to is that like, if you're anything you do because you have to do it feels like work. You know what I mean? But it's like if you can find a way to sort of use social media as another vehicle to express your art, to and then maybe express the part of it that is kind of like the fun side, you know what I mean, like the part that's not so serious, like because every person that I've ever met that as dark as their content maybe, like as whatever the material that they're writing about is, whatever. I'm sorry if I'm fidgeting a lot, I'm just that kind of person.
You're fine.
But however,
it's your show.
However dark they like may come across, and I'm just using that as a blanket term, but
heavy,
yeah, deep or whatever. Chances are there's another side of that person that is just, really fun, and it might, or they have like a real weird, quirky sense of humor, or just whatever. Like there's another side of their personality.
Sure.
And I think that social media is a really good opportunity to, not just use it to show someone that, but to like kind of explore it yourself. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're putting all this time into the art that you're creating and putting yourself in that place of, where you were that when you had an experience that made you want to write that song or whatever. And then maybe you have this other side of your personality that's really like offbeat or quirky or whatever, but you don't get to have fun with it that much because you spend all this time like sitting in this other space mentally. So, your social media time can be kind of like more like your fun time or whatever. And so I do see bands that really like, they do fun posts where, I've seen bands like dress up to do posts. We've done, so one of my favorite series of videos that we got to do recently, we had this show in August and Jerry's band was playing. We were bringing a band in from out of town, which can be really stressful sometimes because you want it to be good for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
We were bringing in Losing September from, they're mostly from Muncie, Indiana, but they're from, some surrounding areas too. And we had Chronicles of June and Scarlet Sky, two other local bands. And after we released the date and after we had the whole lineup put together and everyone had their tickets, it was like every other week they were announcing this other huge show in the genre, like Alice in Chains and Korn, I think they were playing together. That was out at the Pavilion.
Right.
Zach Sabbath.
Yeah. Zach Wild playing Black
yeah,
Sabbath.
But so he was Zach Wild covering, that what he does with his cover band or whatever.
Right.
But so Zach Sabbath was going to be at the Rex. And
I remember that weekend.
And Iron Maiden was playing at.
I remember that weekend.
Mm-hmm, and we had our show planned for like 6 months prior to all that happening.
You can't win.
So we just kind of started making fun of it. The first video we put out, we had like Jerry and Jason. Jerry was like drinking water, and Jason's like, "Hey, buddy," and he like leans around the corner, and he's like, I don't know, he starts like rattling off like all the other shows that are happening, and like he gets to the last one and Jerry just like spits water out and he's just like, oh, what the fuck? you know what I mean? And so it was just like literally like a 30-second like little clip of like just them talking about all this that was happening. And then we did another one where we spoofed, it was for the same show, or no, the first one we spoofed Wayne's World.
Okay.
And I don't even remember like because it was me and Jerry, I was Garth. And I can't remember.
I gotta go back and look at that.
I'll have to find it. I forget the dialogue, but it was about the show. And then we did another one spoofing Back to the Future with Jerry and Jason, and just like he like comes basically, he's like, "It's your show, Jerry. Nobody goes." But it's like, so I mean,
How was it attended?
It was great.
There you go. See, there you go.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was because of those videos, but I think it helps, and I think that. It's a twofold approach where, like, you have to have that online presence. Right. You know what I mean? You have to be there. Like, that's where everyone's scrolling in between everything else that they're doing.
No doubt.
But you do have to do the one-to-one thing, too. And what I tell bands is, you have to have that presence online, but you can't forget about the, like, one-to-one contact with people, especially if you're selling tickets. Like,
no doubt.
When I first started like helping Jerry's band promote, when I was helping Winter's Descent before I ever was a promoter, it was literally that I would just like call all my friends, like actually call them, you know what I mean? And that was, years ago, but whenever people mostly made phone calls, and,
I remember those days,
or just texting or whatever. But so now, like, with social media and everything, like my network's bigger.
Sure.
And so if I'm promoting a show, and especially if I'm promoting a show that I know I'm competing with a lot of other stuff, whether it's for his band or just a show that I'm promoting for the company, I do reach out to people one-to-one still. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that you have to be...
It's still the best.
Yeah, and you have to be, like, aware of your approach. You want to have that self-awareness where you don't want to be so pushy that you're, like, pressuring people to buy a ticket from you. That's not going to work. People feel like they're being, like, abused.
They're being sold.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, just letting someone know, like, hey, man, like, I know I haven't talked to you for a couple weeks. Sorry I haven't reached out. I've been really busy. By the way, I have the show coming up. If you're around, would be great if you could come. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be that big a deal, and it doesn't have to be like salesmanship. A lot of times it's just, that personal connection. And I've sold tons of tickets to people that, like, maybe I haven't seen in a while, and it was a fun excuse for us to get together. Like,
right.
Most of my friends, like, I will, if it's like an actual personal friend, I definitely usually apologize and say, like, I'm sorry, I'm just reaching out to you now about this show. I've wanted to get together, and everybody's busy. Well, sure. Everybody used to be busy. Everything, all of this is pretty past tense for the current climate that we're living in.
It's temporary.
This temporary weird
temporary
world that we're living in, where people don't have anything
what
to
day
do.
of the week is it?
Told you it's Monday.
That's right. It's Monday.
But this is a great way to spend a Monday. And normally I would be super stressed out on a Monday. And today I worked from home and was done with work at 4:30 and already home.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there's positives, I guess, too. But I always just kind of say, like, don't be afraid to talk to people. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that that's a thing where some artists gravitate towards being artists because they're introverts and
Right.
it's
That's
uncomfortable.
a problem. Yeah, that's a problem.
So then I think in those instances, whenever you have a band,
You get a front man because they don't have any introvert problems.
you'd be surprised how many front men and women I know that would definitely describe themselves, whether they're introverts or just not people. It definitely happens more than you think, but it's not uncommon, which is weird to me. But
Not a lot of David Lee Ross running around out there. Huh?
I guess not. Who was he on? Was he on Rogan?
He was on Rogan. That was a rip roaring 2 hours.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was a good one.
He was on something.
Because he has the tattoo oil now that he makes, right?
Right. Right.
I knew he was selling something.
I don't think he was on anything. He says he wasn't, but it sure seemed like he was on amphetamines or something because he was a mile a minute.
Yeah, right? Or maybe just a lot of caffeine. Some people are more sensitive. If you get like a cup of like really good coffee on me and
it'll wire you out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
and I won't shut up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a whole new level. But either way. But yeah, I think that just that personal connection with people, I think that's what a lot of people, and I think people are missing that. I don't think it's bad to have an excuse to call somebody up, and if it's that you're inviting them to come to a show, and hey, if they really are annoyed with you because you keep asking them to come to shows, then like maybe they're just not your kind of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I get it.
Because I can't tell. So many people reach out to me to go to their shows, and I'm never irritated. Like I can't always go. You know what I mean? Like I tell people no when I can't go, and it doesn't bother me, and I don't think it bothers them. But it never bothers me to be asked.
If you like the genre of music, if you like heavy music, you like hard rock music, metal music, it's not a stretch. You will enjoy the show because the band. Most bands have their shit together. They do. Right. And you're going to feed off of that. Even if you know none of the music, if you like that genre of music, it's worth going.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%.
So, to somebody that hears that they're, that you're doing promotion, that you have a production company, but part of it is putting shows together. Talk a little bit about what is the process of contacting like a venue, and who do you talk to there? How's the money work without getting into any hard numbers? Like, is there a gate option, or do you get money up front? Like, how do you make the innards of that work?
So you're asking like what like my like start to finish process kind of is? I just want to make sure.
Generally, I don't want anything specific. Sure. Yeah, just generally.
So. And this is where I think it's valuable to like understand why having someone like be a promoter is valuable and makes sense if they're doing their job.
Right.
But also, why some bands could be doing some of this, can do this stuff themselves. And a lot of it comes down to organization. Or
they're not comfortable doing it.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of it is building relationships too. I would say like those are the two, like if there's like two big things about being a promoter, organization and relationships, because the venues that I have worked with, like I have a point of contact at all of them. They know me. They know that I'm not gonna like bomb the night, and that I'm not gonna because that's some bands will do that. Like they'll put a hold on a venue, which means the term putting a hold on a venue is that you're putting your name on that date and you're saying like I'm gonna do a show here that night.
Right.
And they keep, maybe a venue has it worked out, like all venues have different deals. So whether it's that you're paying rent up front or you're paying your rent at the end of the night, it's all different. And so maybe a band isn't going to pay until the end of the night, and then at the end of the night there's not even enough door money to cover the venue because they didn't promote it. Right. And then like they're complaining because they still owe the venue money, and then they call that a pay to play, and it's like, well, it's not if you didn't promote your show. You know what I mean? But what I think a true pay to play is there's different situations where promoters will have a certain ticket requirement and they'll expect all that money for the amount of tickets that they negotiated you to sell right off the bat. But where I see that as kind of being a little tricky is that I don't do that type of situation. Like I don't give bands minimum requirements. However, if I'm going to have a band do a show, I might say, in certain situations, you might not want to take this show if you can't bring at least 10 people, because I won't invite you back. You know what
I
mean?
wouldn't think that'd be hard, right?
I wouldn't think so, but you'd be surprised.
Okay.
So like, and to me, like, that's just being honest. It's like, look, like, you're not gonna owe me anything. Like, if you come in here and you've only sold 5 tickets and you hand me $50 and each ticket was $10 and that's all you did, I'm not taking any more money from you, and I'm probably maybe still going to give you money back.
Yeah.
But I might not invite you to come back. You know what I mean? It just depends. And every situation is different. And, sometimes a band is coming off of a streak where they just played too many shows. And I tell bands that too, like, from start to finish, like, if I book a venue, book a band, one of the things that I'm looking at is, is this band a good fit for this lineup? And are they playing a ton of shows right beforehand? Like, if I see a band already has a show announced a week before the show that I want to book them at, I'm probably not going to call them.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Because they're going to have all their fans at the show the week before.
Got it.
Now, some bands can do that. Like, some bands can play a couple shows, back to back, and they have enough people that want to see them that it'll work for them. Mm-hmm. And by all means, if I raise that concern and they come back to me and they're like, no, we actually, there's a bunch of people that couldn't go to the show and they really want to see us and that we know they're going to come this week. I'll take someone's word if I know them and trust them.
Sure.
And I've done it and it's worked out fine.
Right.
So, there's that kind of like pre-planning phase. And that's, I think, what a lot of people, when maybe a band that doesn't have a lot of experience that wants to set up their own show, they're not looking at the whole picture.
Okay.
And so one of the things that's nice about my role is that I'm not an artist, so I'm not focused on creating art, and I don't have a production schedule to keep up with. Like, I'm not, in the studio recording anything right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not writing music right now. I'm not working on merch designs for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to deal with that stuff. So
got it.
When I'm doing a show, that's my whole focus. Maybe that plus another show that I'm working on. So the first thing I'm looking at is like, does the lineup make sense? Like, which band's going to headline? Which band's going to open? What are my middle bands? Which bands do I think would, how does the progression of the show work? Do I have a really heavy band that would, not make sense to put on before this really, middle of the road band?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how's the show going to look? And how is it going to, how's the audience going to like it? What are my time?
How many usual acts are there on a show?
I like to have 3 or 4.
Okay.
Like 3 is nice if they're all pretty decently drawing bands.
Okay.
And they also like to have a little bit longer of a set.
All right.
A 4 is a great number of bands if no one minds the fact that like they need to be organized, because it's just a little bit more to manage. So
the change of gear.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Getting the gear on and off stage. If I know the venue, if I know the sound guy, if I know the layout enough.
Got it.
I like our Crucible nights. We do 4 bands on those all the time.
Okay.
And it runs well because we know everybody. And,
what are some of the venues for that?
So the Crucible nights only at the Funhouse at Mr. Smalls.
Okay.
So that showcase or that series only ever runs there.
Got it.
And that's kind of like built around that. When I do shows at other venues, if I don't know the staff as well, sometimes I'm hesitant to do 4 bands, but I mean, I've definitely done it. I've done 4 band shows at Cativo a couple times, and they're nice, and they make it easy.
Right.
And it has worked out well for me so far. So, it's a lot of it's just a matter of like where you're gonna, have everything. And the gear part is probably the part that I'm the most ignorant on. Like, I don't always think about, well, where's someone's bass amp gonna be when they're not on stage? Like, is there a place for it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are they sharing, or cabs or whatever they're called?
Well, usually the bands are pretty good about that, right? I mean, like knowing how to break down their I'm not getting an affirmative there at all from you.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I hate to say it because like sometimes I feel like I've wound up in situations where like everything took so much longer and I have no idea why it happened.
Right,
Like, because I don't usually pay attention. Like, that's one of the things that's great about having a partner that's a musician.
Right.
Because Jerry will literally like hop on and start moving gear with bands.
Got
and
it.
He knows how to do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank goodness, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the good thing about having a partnership is you can kind of like pull on each other's strengths. So that's been something that, we've utilized a lot. So, but so those are like kind of the logistic things that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Just initially when I'm first looking at like the venue, the lineup, all that stuff.
Okay.
And then you got to look at like, you know, the numbers. It's like, you know, say it costs, you know, we'll pick a round number, like say it costs like $200 to run a venue. And I know that I can't charge more than $10 at the door, because I know people won't pay more than that.
Which is insane to me.
That's the high number too. A lot of people don't even like it when it's 10.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
But that way I know, like in that instance, I know that if 20 people don't walk through the door, I'm not even covering the venue.
Right.
And then how much would I like to pay the bands? Like what's the caliber of bands that and I hate to say like a word like caliber, but like, you know, a band that's been a band for 5+ years that really has a strong fan base and they have a solid set and they can, you know, and I hate to use a number like 5 years because there are bands that have only been a band for like 2 to 3 years that are fantastic that I would trust in a heartbeat to draw 20+ people. But, you know, like I'm looking at the whole picture when it comes to a band is basically what I'm saying is that like, you know, if I'm looking at a lineup that I think I have solid bands on the lineup, I don't want to not pay them.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, so I know that I want those first 20 people to come in to cover the venue. And then I hopefully am going to have, you know, an additional X amount of people come in the door that are going to provide me with the ability to pay each band. And then hopefully I'm making at least something to cover my own time. And that's always the thing that comes last. And that's where like, you know, like like I said, it's a labor of love. And I think that I think there've been a lot of promoters that have given the term promoter a bad name because they've taken advantage of bands.
Certainly.
But to say that your time, it doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it is wrong because I get paid at my job. You know what I mean? And I spend way more time on this sometimes, not more than my job maybe, but there have been weeks that I've spent at least 40 hours outside of my day job working on, you know, a show. Right. So, you know, it's hard to kind of make the numbers make sense, especially whenever you're, you know, working with smaller numbers, because right now we're still growing. And our 2020 goal was to start bringing national bands through. So that's going to get pushed back. But, you know, it's okay because I think that once we come out of this whole situation, everything's going to look different anyway. And like I said, I'm in the middle of building. I didn't build the website, but I had good friends, and congratulations to my friend Alexis Cavada, who just delivered her second child. So during the whole in the middle of a pandemic. So my and she's an amazing artist. I've known her since I was in my 20s. We were actually massage therapists together that was like my whole other life before I was a diet tech, before I was a promoter. But so I've known her and her husband for a good long time, and they have a small business that they do some advertising stuff and design and, you know, web design and things like that. And so they actually built my website for me. And then while we were in the process of this build, first of all, like, you know, the holidays hit, because I think I started this like right before the holidays.
Okay.
And then we go into the pandemic. And then I'm just like, well, I don't have a huge deadline right now because everything I was planning to do in the next 3 months just got moved 3 months later. So it's taken a little longer to launch the website than I had planned, but I'm also not terribly worried about it.
Pennsylvania law, you have to be done playing by 2. How's that work?
So it depends on the neighborhood you're in.
The noise ordinance.
Yeah. So City of Pittsburgh has some pretty strict noise ordinances. And if anyone remembers, this was a big topic a while ago, was the Pittsburgh ecosystem, the music ecosystem project or whatever it was. But it was basically this guy from Austin, Texas came in and did like an assessment on ways that he thought the Pittsburgh entertainment community could be more thriving or whatever. That basically, like, when we won that like best most livable city thing, the thing that we were criticized on was that we didn't have very strong nightlife. And a lot of that comes down to well, I don't want to say all of it, but there are parts of it that come down to some laws that are still in place about noise ordinances, entertainment taxes, things like that.
You think?
Yeah. So, and that becomes more of the venue, you know, concern. So what we usually go by is, I mean, the bars are all closed at 2.
Right.
So if we're doing an over 21 show, we can pretty much usually have music going as long as we're within their noise ordinance requirements, music can still be going past midnight. But if it's the age limit, like if we have an all ages show, it has to be over at midnight because you're not allowed to have any minors in a bar any time past midnight.
How many all ages shows do you do?
We try to do as many as we can, honestly. Like most of the Crucible Project nights, the Funhouse at Mr. Small's are all ages now. And we've been able to do that by strategic scheduling. Again, getting bands on and off stage in a reasonable time. Like our shows will usually run from like 8 p.m. to midnight. And so you've got a 4-hour window to get 4 bands on. Each band's not necessarily playing.
That's not a lot of time for 4 bands.
It's not, but if no band is playing for like an hour, you know what I mean? Like all of the set times are like, 35 to 50 minutes approximately. So a lot of it's just making sure that people stay in their agreed upon set time.
Are the bands okay with that? Sounds like a small amount of time.
So if a band is new and they're the opener, sometimes they'll get 35 minutes. Now, like it's weird because standard for the kind of shows that we're doing, like for, multiple bands, in a lot of cities, a half an hour time set is pretty standard.
Okay.
I'm not crazy about it. I don't think a lot of bands are crazy about it. And so that's why we always do the shortest set is 35 minutes because that's at least another song usually.
Sure.
And it's always agreed upon ahead of time. Like if a band is the opener, they're already agreeing to be the opener, and they might be the opener because they're new.
You get 12 minutes.
I would never do that. I would honestly anything shorter than even a half an hour. I don't remember. I can't recall a time that I did that I set up a show with half an hour time slots.
Right.
That's not something that I organized to do. But 35 minutes as an opener is not unheard of. And if a band, like I said, is kind of newer, a lot of times they don't mind. You know what I mean? They might just have that amount of material anyway. Like, especially because we're asking them to do all original material for the most part. I mean, 1 or 2 covers here or there is fine, but they're not doing cover sets.
That's interesting.
So they're doing their own songs. So I mean, maybe they only have 35 minutes worth of their own songs.
So is that a qualifier for a band to work with you, is they've got to have original material?
It's not like a make or break thing, but most of what we do is we promote original music.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like, it's not that a band can't play covers. They can play a couple covers. That's fine. If you do have 1, maybe even 2 covers during a 45-minute set, I'm not going to kick you off stage. You know what I mean? But we're encouraging local original music. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's something
that's good for the community, right? Because if you don't want to just promote cover bands and garage bands.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? If that's what you do, that's totally cool. You know what I mean? I'm 100% in favor of people playing any kind of music they want to play.
Okay.
It's totally cool. But I haven't gotten as much into it because it's just not been where I've found my niche.
So but if you had a gig where, let's say, Winter's Descent was headlining and you had 1 opening act, so you say you did that show, Winter's Descent would play an hour, right? They could play an hour and 10.
I mean, we've never even considered doing that.
Well, there's an idea. See?
Not that they could. I mean, they certainly could, and I know a lot of bands that could fill that time, for sure. And so, and a lot of times, like if I'm putting on a band that I know likes to play a longer set, it might be that I'm doing an over 21 show anyway.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Yep. Like, because that kind of tends to, I'm not saying that no one under 21 would want to play a long set, but I feel like if you have more than an hour's worth of material and you're under 21, I'm impressed.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So like, and I don't know if that is a good answer, but either way, I would say that doing 4 bands at an all ages show from 8 o'clock to midnight is 100% doable. The way we usually do is like 35 minutes, 40 minutes is the next band set. And then maybe the last 2 are getting 45 to 50, or maybe the middle 2 bands are just getting 40 minutes. You know what I mean? And being very transparent about like, this is and most bands will ask before I even get the chance to tell them, like, how long do we get? You know what I mean? They want to know. And so if they know going in that they're planning for that length of a set, they're picking their strongest songs. You know what I mean? Like they're picking those songs that they think are going to represent them the best.
And hopefully everybody's breaking down their equipment and getting it off stage and all that stuff on time.
And see, this was something that I never knew, because I think when I was originally doing the schedules, I was scheduling 15 minutes in between. And then at like one point, I don't remember if it was like Jerry or Jason told me, because this was at the Fun House, that 15 minutes wasn't long enough. I was like, well, has anyone ever read my schedule? Because I've been doing it this way for a while. And so then we started building 20 minutes in between, and that has worked a lot better, because sometimes you can do it in 15 minutes if everyone's really organized, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But 20 minutes is usually long enough. So that's part of the pre-planning, is the schedule. And then there's like then we haven't even talked about actual promotion yet. So, you know, getting a decent flyer together depends on whether I'm hiring someone or whether someone in one of the bands can do it. You know, that's a way to cut costs, and I'm very transparent about that. If I'm working with a band and I know that one of their members is also a graphic designer, or like has the ability to use Photoshop more effectively than I would maybe, I'll be like, hey, like, I know you do flyers, and it would be great if I didn't have to pay somebody. Can you do one?
Yeah, little synergy there with people around you.
Yeah, you know, and honestly, most people don't mind. You know what I mean? Like they, you know, and like I said, when I hang flyers, I always ask the bands to help me. And if they say no, or they can't, or they're like, you know, 45 minutes away, I mean, my next question is going to be like, well, are you going to be able to get people to go to the show?
Right. Distance. Distance for sure.
But no, I mean, usually I've already worked that out. But like, if it just doesn't work out, that like, it's just not convenient for them. And I mean, it's not convenient for anybody to hang flyers. I mean, let's be honest. You're driving around the city, going in and out of places. I mean, I like doing it because it's like, I make it fun. But I mean, it's not like, it's work, you know what I mean?
Sure it is.
And but I'm always going to ask a band to help me with it. And if they can't, then that's okay. I'm not judging them. You know what I mean?
Is that still, I mean, and I play devil's advocate, is that that really ultra organic way of hanging band flyers as opposed to the power of the web? Do you still see success hanging those flyers?
I mean, I do both. I think it's important, because if you think about, and again, like, you know, we're in this temporary place right now, but anytime you're at a venue, there's going to be flyers on the wall for that venue.
That's true.
And so, you know, imagine if you were at a venue that like just literally like didn't have anything on the walls about shows they had coming up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it would just be weird. And so like, if only for the venue that you're actually playing the show at, I mean, I guess it's like, it's almost weird, because if they're already there, then, but you know, maybe they're going to be there on a Tuesday for, you know, open mic night, or they're there just to drink on a Thursday. Yeah. And then they see like, hey, this band that my girlfriend's, you know, brother-in-law's in, that I keep meaning to go see, you know, is playing next Saturday. Like, I wonder if my girlfriend knows about this. Maybe I should ask. You know what I mean? Right. Like, so I think there's value in that respect. And I do think, especially because Pittsburgh is like, there are certain communities that are very like walkable, like Lawrenceville.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of foot traffic around there.
Yinzers like their local bars.
They do. And so I do think that even like just for, and I hate to like use this word, but even just for branding alone, or for brand integrity. And I've heard, I think actually Brian brought this up, Sykes was saying, where he was like at a coffee shop, and like, it just kind of, it reinforces, you know what I mean? Like, if you're seeing someone's stuff online, and then and then you're sitting and having, you know, the place that you stopped to get your breakfast sandwich or whatever, and you're like, oh, hey, look, I know that band. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one more way to reach people. And I don't think that I think that online is probably still more important, and becoming ever increasingly more important. And
if these venues start developing their own websites too, right? Some of the smaller venues don't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the venues in Pittsburgh that I book at have their own.
Okay.
I can say most, maybe not all, but most. And then, you know, Instagram and Facebook advertising, you know, it's real easy to run them on both platforms.
Absolutely.
So it's, you know, and even in the time since we started promoting, I would say we have shifted our budgeting from physical to digital. Okay. You know what I mean? Like on some of the shows that we've done. So yeah, it's all important. You know what I mean? And I do think that just the initial layout of a good flyer I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see, like, especially because like a lot of people that are, in bands, maybe they're just artistic people anyway, or maybe they have a graphic design degree and they're like, man, that flyer looks crappy. Like, why'd you put that one out? You know what I mean? Like so-and-so could have done it better. So you want everything to look good,
Sure.
The visual aspect of it, that's part of what's going to make people come to the show. And that was actually like, when I used to have a little bit more time to devote to each show, one of the things that we got really into when we first started doing this was the flyers. Like, we started working with Jonna from First Angel Media, and she would, we'd kind of like bring her on as like our consultant photographer. And we've done ones where the first show in December of 2016, my concept was to have a girl in each band shirt as the flyer, because I thought that would be more eye-catching than a bunch of dudes on the flyer. And
generally speaking, yes.
It was. But the confusing part was that I guess, like, because I was wearing Jerry's band shirt, I was wearing a Winter Scent shirt, and I had Cassidy wearing a Neverwake shirt. My friend Katie was wearing Alter the Design.
I saw that photo.
Amanda was wearing R13, and my friend Lily was wearing Silence Follows. And so everyone ended up asking me if I was in a band after that.
Of course.
And I was like, no, did you read the flyer? But then we did some really fun ones. Like, I had Brian's girlfriend, Stacy, my favorite one that I ever did. We actually had a makeup artist make her look like a stone angel, or made her look like a stone like person. And I had her stand next to a stone angel in a cemetery, and we did like the title for the show was Sanctuary.
I think I saw that photo too.
Yeah. Oh, it's like still my favorite. I mean, like, I can't imagine like what it was like to get all this paint and stuff off whenever she was done, because like her whole like head was sprayed with like gray hairspray, and I mean, she had like body paint all over her arms and everything. And she's such a great model. She like literally, like, as soon as I showed her the statue I wanted her to pose with, she just like climbed right up and like got into position, and just like the photo. I mean, Jonna did a whole series for her because like that was part of, just we're like, well, we're already here, we may as well get some other shots.
Right.
And it's, to this day, it's like my favorite composition of photos, that they're just so beautiful. And she's released them on her page too, so plug for both of them, check them out.
Right.
But so we used to do stuff like that a lot more. We did like one with a pig's heart once for Valentine's Day.
I saw that. That's what that was.
That was a pig's heart.
That was gruesome.
Oh yeah, that was no love lost.
Ladies were holding the.
Yeah, like
it was
holding
all
the heart.
bloody.
Yeah, that one. That was a good one.
So much fun.
I know. That's you gotta keep it fun.
I guess.
Hold that guy's heart in your hand.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh, and then we did. Oh, the Asylum one was great. We did we would get like members from all the bands. We did that for a while, and we had I remember Jerry and Zosha were in that one. Jason was in that one, and they had like. I think Jerry was the mental patient and Zosha was the nurse, and she was like getting ready to stick him in the neck, and that was for a Halloween show. Gosh, we did a bunch of them. Oh, I did one with it was called Collision, and it was like this like kind of like space themed. Like we had like a friend of ours that did cosplay do like a whole space suit for someone, and it was so cool. She built the helmet out of a fishbowl and paper mache. So it's like we've had a lot of fun with them. The problem is I mean, I would love to do one for every single show, but it's very time consuming.
Yeah,
and
probably pricey at times too.
It can be, yeah. And so we haven't had a chance to, we haven't done one in a little while, but so all that to say, I mean, I think that really, initially when we first started promoting shows kind of helped us stand out a little bit, because a lot of people remembered them.
That's a differentiator between you and anybody else doing it, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, I think that graphics, you can do a lot with Photoshop right now. You can do a lot with just imagery and graphics and, pulling images from the internet. But especially when people would see people they knew, whether it was someone from the band or someone from the scene, and kind of like see, this
better connection. Yeah,
it's a different artistic expression. So yeah, I mean, I would like to get back to doing stuff like that again whenever people can do things in person again.
Do you do any midweek shows at all, or does Pittsburgh just not support it?
I'm sure that there are places that would support it. I have not had a ton. It's not even, I mean, some of the shows, I did a Monday night show once that did way better than I anticipated it. And it's not that it doesn't ever work out. It's just that it's hard. It's hard with my own schedule. I generally work Monday through Friday.
Right.
So, Jerry works Monday through Friday. So it's like, it's hard for us just as individuals to do it. And then I think most people, I mean, I'm not saying everyone's a 9-to-5er, but I think a lot of people keep those hours approximately.
Sure.
And so it just becomes a challenge.
Plus the band's got to get there too. All the members have to be okay with playing, so it's a shame though, limits you really to basically Friday and Saturday nights.
It's true. And I mean, I've had a lot more interest in midweek shows, and I'm hoping potentially spreading to like a younger demographic. Then you've got college students, and maybe their schedules are a little bit more flexible.
You think?
Yeah, I know mine was. So like, I think that, doing that down the road is definitely a goal. A lot of it, and like honestly, this summer that we were really going to try to plan to do a couple like Wednesday, Thursday shows, because usually the week kind of goes on.
Yes.
People are a little bit more apt to go out because it's getting like, the weekends in sight. I really think that 2020 is going to be more of a building year for us now. I think for a lot of people, especially just because we're not sure what the live climate's going to be. So.
Yeah, no one has a real good feel for what we're coming back to.
Right, exactly.
In any capacity. We are going to come back, thank goodness. Before you leave today, though, we want to talk a little bit about your blogging sphere.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So my blog was supposed to be the thing that I was going to focus on. I started a new job in January of 2017, I think it was. And maybe it was 2018. Okay. I apologize. Right. So I had this like 2-week block in between one job ending and a new job starting. And I had wanted to start a blog for so long. Like I was always, when I loved writing when I was younger, I thought that was what I was going to do when I was like 16. And I just, like, I wanted to do something that was going to be just for me. Like I was already promoting shows at that time. We had talked about starting a company, but we hadn't done it yet. And it was kind of like, we didn't even have a name, and it was a very loose discussion. And so I had no idea that in 3 months I would actually do it. I really thought that it was like this far future thing. Okay. So in my mind, like, Jerry has his band, and, and I promote a lot of other bands, and I'm always like cross promoting and stuff. I was like, this will be something that can be just for me. And I can write about music if I want, but I can also write about makeup, or I can write about essential oils, or I can write about food and recipes and just whatever strikes me. Sure. So I had this 2-week period, and my cousin actually works in advertising. So she had done some web design, so she helped me build the initial layout. And if you go on the blog now, it's not what I initially built, because subsequently I started a company, and so my blog fell totally by the wayside. And I didn't want to pay for like the more expensive theme or whatever, so I just like did the cheaper one, and so it like reformatted everything automatically, because I haven't written a blog post in probably about 6 months. So juliewinters.com is my blog, and I chose that name because if anyone remembers MTV's Oddities, way back when, they adapted this comic book called The Max, and Jerry actually was the first person that introduced me to it when I was a teenager. And one of the main characters is Julie Winters, and I just really resonated with that character. And of course, it was fitting from Winter's Descent. Kind of all came together, very serendipitous. But I originally had the name as this like Celtic word for winter. It didn't roll off the tongue as easily, and I was like, no one's ever going to remember to search for that. So Julie Winters is pretty easy to remember, and I do have a Facebook page. So my blog is basically just whatever I want it to be. It doesn't have any real direction. And then I read later that if you want to take blogging seriously, your blog should be very specific, and so I obviously didn't do that. But I come back to it whenever the mood strikes me. I tend to blog in bulk, so I'll get a kind of a bug up my butt to get into it, and I'll sit down and I'll write 5 or 6 blog posts, right, put a bunch of new stuff out there, reformat the whole thing, and then I won't touch it for 3 or 4 months.
But it's still there.
Wasn't my intention when I first started, but it is still there, and there's a lot of articles in there. Like I said, I think the newest one is probably about 6 months old. I do have a Facebook page for it, and so what I do when I started doing my little scene reports, which a lot of people, if you're friends with me on Facebook,
talk about that.
So that was just kind of like a fun thing that I started doing. I heard about it on a podcast I was listening to. Someone was saying that someone used to do like a zine, like way back when zines were a thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
As like a scene report, and I was like, I could do that on my Facebook page, and it would be easy, and I wouldn't need any knowledge to do it, because what I didn't know about blogging was how much like technical. It's not super technical if you're someone that's like good with that kind of stuff, but I had no experience running a website at all. So when my cousin first like taught me how to use my blog, I was so intimidated. So when I did the scene report, I was like, oh, this is easy. I just push go and I go. And I, getting a tripod was the most high-tech thing I've ever done. And I keep like saying that I'm gonna like, put a background in, or I'm going to use a different and then like, it's not that it isn't important to me, but it's something that, again, it's something I just do for fun.
Right.
And so every week I do it on Thursday. And it's just from my Facebook page, but I do, save all of the events that I share on my scene report to my blog Facebook.
Okay.
So that, cause you have to have like an actual Facebook page to be able to share, like have events like hosted there. Right. So every week I come on Thursday nights and I just talk about what's happening through the weekend and the following week. Before the quarantine. I usually would actually have to kind of like choose which events I wanted to share, because a lot of times I would run out of time. Right. Or not, maybe I just didn't want to go for longer than like 10 to 12 minutes. And then now I've been talking about, businesses that are local and, just kind of trying to stay connected to people mainly,
which is important.
I think so. I mean, honestly, like it's something I've been doing since before this. So I was like, I could stop, but people are still doing stuff online. Bands are still releasing new music. It's mostly music focused. But I will share stuff like if there's like a event happening that's art related or whatever. It's not anything that catches my eye. Usually it's just stuff that's going on in the city and surrounding areas.
Our community in Pittsburgh is somewhat some of the art community in Pittsburgh is somewhat tied in with musicians at all. Have you ever explored any of that?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of artists that are very music focused and vice versa. Like I think they go hand in hand. From what I've heard, the art community is definitely its own entity, and I'm not as involved in that, obviously. But when I was younger, like my dad took me to the Three Rivers Arts Festival every year when I was growing up, and it's just something that's always been important to me. So I'm very supportive of the art community. I'm not an artist, so I don't find myself like as entrenched in it as I am in the music scene. And I've heard there's differences, I guess. I'm sure, like anything, just like there's differences in subgenres of music, I'm sure there's differences in types of art communities. But from what I understand, and what I've seen, our art community is very thriving. So
yeah, it is, and it's an area of my life that had no existence until we started doing this show. And we've had Mia Tarducci on, we've had renowned world photographer George Lang on, we've had local Zach Rutter on.
Yeah. Spread Love Army.
Absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, like I know that Zach in particular, likes to embrace events that have music as well too, where there's live painting going on. There's all kinds of really interesting opportunities,
like collaborations and stuff.
There's cool opportunities I think that are out there. But
I mean we've definitely looked at like what we could do to kind of incorporate more of the local art scene in. I think a lot of that has been kind of like little nebulous ideas that we haven't really gotten to get to fruition yet. So hopefully, like I said, I mean I think in some ways, I think, having this time for anyone that's in like an artistic realm to sort of get to step back and focus. And I know a lot of people are struggling because they're not feeling inspired because they've been, looking at the same four walls for however long or whatever. But, if anything, it's a time to reflect and kind of look at, strategic planning and how you want to approach something and all that kind of stuff.
And I think that's a very good point. And I wonder how, whether it's the art community, whether it's small business community, people that create content makers, I wonder how much of this quarantine time has been used productively and how much missed opportunity. And opportunity is a funny word to use with a quarantine. I get that. But every moment you have on this world, from my standpoint, is an opportunity.
Sure.
I wonder how many wasted 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 weeks, when there was opportunities to do something, creative or career driven or something.
Right. No, I mean, I know I've struggled even just like, there are days that I feel, and I mean, I'm still working too. That's like the other part of it is that like,
you're not really quarantined.
No, like
theoretically.
My 9 to 5 or my 40-hour work week still exists. So I'm still really only allotted the same amount of time I had what's been different for me is obviously I'm not organizing events, and that takes up a huge amount of my time.
Right.
And I'm not attending any events, because even if I'm not hosting an event, I do try to be present.
Yeah.
If I try to support other people's events. I know a lot of other promoters and just organizers, whether they're officially promoters or not. I try to support other people's events too.
Mm-hmm.
So, most of my calendar, most of the time, is pretty full. And so for myself, even, I can say, like, I have spent some, my website's a perfect example. I could have had it done. And I am like, I just, like, some days, like, I get home and I'm like, man, everyone else has been off all day. Like, I want to Netflix and chill for the next 2 hours. And that's what I do. But it's like, I feel like it's not time wasted if maybe, like, because some people that are like, entrepreneurial, if they're an artist or business or whatever, it's like they're one of those people that are like always on, and maybe like this time was just their time to just turn off. You know what I mean?
I think there's some validity to that. Yeah, I think
I know that's how I have been in some respects.
I think when I'm at my most relaxed, I'm able to think better, and I think some of the best creative things that I've ever been able to accomplish have come out of periods of relaxation.
Sure, I agree. I totally agree. 100%. Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
I like I said, we talked about a few other opportunities for you to come back, hopefully with Jerry, with a member of the band. I'd love to get Freddie Qualo in the same room with all of you too. I think we'd have some good rock and roll stories to tell.
For sure, definitely.
But if you're game, you have an open door here to come anytime you want.
I will be back for sure. I can't wait to sit in the same room as you.
I know, it's going to be good. We can finally get in the room. I want to get Jerry here, and maybe another member of the band too. We'll figure out logistics. I don't have a lot of room here, but I'd like to get I do want to have Winter's Descent, a show on Winter's Descent, and I want Fred as a participant in that too, because he digs your music as I do.
That's awesome. Well, I'll pass it on, or they'll see it, I'm sure.
Hopefully there. Well, thank you, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Until next time.
Okay, sounds good.
We are out.